Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Game Over, where we discuss interesting topics while playing some badass video games. I got a few friends on with me tonight. Annie, you want to say hello?
What's up?
And Coco.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's good, people? Annie, you and I go way back, don't we? I think it's been like 7 years.
Yeah,
Give or
about 7
take.
years.
Yeah, give or take. Which is to bring back one of our previous episodes, the episode just before this one. If you guys haven't watched it, I suggest you watch it. Where, it's been forever since I last spoke with Annie because, sort of life just took us our separate ways. But that's how you know you have a good one. It's like as soon as I started talking with her, it's almost as if we never stopped talking. It just went smooth as hell. And this is what I mean by having people that are worth keeping around in your life. We got a great game for you guys tonight. NieR Automata. I know that you're familiar with it, Coco. Annie, I think you played games by the company that developed it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this game.
And Coco, what about you?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I just haven't played it, but I know what it's about.
So the general premise here is it's a game about sort of the last front of humanity. Apparently there are aliens that invaded the Earth sometime in the future. And they sort of created this new AI life form and started wiping out humanity. But in an effort to survive, humanity fled to the moon and sort of built a solar base where they created androids. The ones that, we're actually watching right now. These androids were created in an effort to fight back. They were the last front of humanity in order to regain the Earth. What we're looking at right now is just footage of the androids trying to regain ground on our soon-to-be deceased planet, as it seems. And yet there's a lot more going on to it, right? Like like you would have in the real world, right? Like there are so many conspiracies going on about what's really going on with the plot. Like the plot is so intricate and there's so many levels to it. The beauty of this game is that it talks about a theme, a general theme that we have in regards to the existence of aliens in UFOs. It makes it seem it's not quite apparent. Like there are a few hints here and there, but there's no solid proof of the existence of aliens. So for all we know, the aliens might just be a fabrication of humanity. And in fact, humanity is the one that created these machine life forms, right? Yet they're claiming that it was an alien invasion that caused it. And then, sometime after you play the game, you start finding out more about, these alien life forms. But at the end of the day, there's this overarching conspiracy that the humans created that, where you're not really sure who the evil is, like what the evil is. Is it really the aliens or is it humanity, right? And so there's a lot going on with the game. And so if you ever have the time, I would suggest you guys give it a shot. I think it's just so much fun, and it's an action, fast-paced game, but it's not necessarily that hard neither. So it's a really good ride. But so yeah, this is the topic of today's podcast, like the existence of aliens and the contribution of humanity in sort of creating this idea of extraterrestrial life forms. Whether it's through the conspiracies that people have created about Area 51 and the type of experiments going on over there and the type of activity that's happening there. And so we're going to look at many different aspects in regards to that. What do you guys think about this?
It'll be like foolish to not think that there's something else in the universe.
So you actually you believe like sort of the stories or conspiracy theories in regards to the existence of extraterrestrial life forms. You think it could be more than just like the bacteria, or what kind of theory do you have in regards to this?
Like single form organisms, like in other planets. That's like pretty much guaranteed in my mind. But like full sentient beings, I'm not too sure about that. and especially them being here among us, I'm not sure about that either.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of conspiracies, like you was talking about.
Hmm.
You start believing, or you start at least thinking about it more. You know what I mean? Like the further you go into it, the more you read or the more you see.
Hmm.
Especially
Yes.
like government documents and stuff that claim that spacecraft, that's public knowledge, like documents from the government saying that, yeah, we found wreckage.
So you're saying that the government actually released footage of this stuff, or they're just claiming that there has been
Not footage,
hmm,
public documents, like
documents?
briefing. Yeah, saying that they did find wreckage and stuff. They did recover bodies. This public knowledge that they released.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, like, that's not really proof, despite it being from the government. I mean, we've already talked about this in a previous episode too, where we discussed, like, you know, how the crime rate is, especially after the epidemic, how it's increased recently. And the reason behind it is mostly, you know, the way the system handles everything. And I think that's sort of another reason why to be skeptical in regards to this information that we've received from the government, that it's not really proof. It shouldn't really be considered proof, what you're saying. You know, like the allegations that they're coming up with is just sort of ridiculous. And I think you could, you know, this is perhaps the topic for another podcast, but you could say the same for us landing on the moon, because there's no real solid proof that it happened. You know, like we know how satellites work, but satellites orbit the Earth. If you leave the atmosphere of the Earth, it becomes a lot more unstable, where it would be harder for you to ever come back to the Earth, especially if you actually study the science behind how, you know, the atmosphere works. And so I personally think that it's all a hoax, especially with the moon landing. With aliens, I personally believe that our universe is huge. It's unlimited. I don't know if you guys know the physicist Stephen Hawking, who passed away recently. Are you guys familiar with his work?
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you guys know the biggest scientific discovery in human history during the 21st century? Do you know what he claimed that to be?
Remind me.
He said that it was the fact that we discovered the universe is ever expanding. So the universe is always expanding. So as we are talking right now, our universe just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Stars keep dying and new stars are being born. Planets are being born, right? And so like it keeps expanding, right? Like space is in a never-ending cycle of expanding over and over and over again. So the limits are always being broadened, right? In my head, I'm thinking that if you have a living universe the way it is right now, you know, the way it's always constantly growing right now, can you really claim that this living universe cannot host other life forms that are as sentient and as smart as our primitive life form? You know, because we,
Yeah.
in comparison to the universe, we are less than a speck of dust. We are less than atoms. We are less than the smallest scale of existence. And so I'm thinking it is a possibility, right? There's no proof, but I'm thinking it is a possibility. You know, God in all his wisdom and might could have essentially also created different life forms, whether it's single-celled organisms or things that are similar to us, aliens that are similar to us, or even beyond us in terms of wit. Because let's face it, humans are not truly the smartest mammals out there sometimes. In fact, one would argue that dolphins are even smarter than we are. You know, their brainwave capacity is beyond anything that humans ever had. And so, you know, if you look at all the different types of creatures that we have just on this planet alone, imagine what could be out there in a vast, ever-expanding universe.
That's true.
What about you, Annie? How do you feel about it? Because I know you sometimes like to get your motivation from other unworldly chemical reactions. And so sometimes you might actually open a third eye that perhaps Coco and I don't utilize quite as much. What does your third eye tell you?
Ooh, that's something that I don't feel I'm ready for. But I am kind of I'm kind of along the same lines as Stephen Hawking. He was kind of along the lines of aliens being hostile and conquerors of whatever they can touch or reach. And I question the same things. What are the aliens' intentions? What do they look like? What are their capabilities?
You think that, because I mean, Stephen Hawking didn't really mention the existence of aliens. He just mentioned the sort of the groundbreaking discovery that we found out in regards to the universe, but he didn't really talk much about aliens. You don't have any like particular views that you're comfortable sharing in regards to their existence, their abilities, how many cells they have, their structure, stuff like that.
I mean, Area 51 and it being a focal point for aliens and aliens themselves have got to be like some of my favorite conspiracy theories. I honestly can't pick a side if like they're real or not until I actually experience them myself. But I would think they're pretty much along the lines of being like us, having internal organs and being able to bleed.
So they're more humanoid than anything else, correct? Like they interact with matter the same way that we would. In your opinion, like you think that's how they would be?
Yeah, I mean they could even way ahead of us and develop like some type of exoskeleton, like in that movie Battle Los Angeles, where they've covered up all their vulnerabilities and just evolved past that. So they have permanent armor where we're just exposed.
It's interesting you would mention that because over recent years, not just with games but with movies, they sort of had all these different theories about extraterrestrial life forms, and it gets you thinking like, why the huge interest in that specific field? You know what I mean? Like, what's really going on behind the scenes there?
Like any conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and certain conspiracy theories that I feel like are a lot more popular than others are not being mentioned in the same way, right? Or maybe they're subtly hinted at, like with Aliens versus Predator, for example, with like the aliens sort of looking like lizards, right? And there's been mention of them existing among us, these lizard people. And that's always been one of the more interesting ones that I've never really quite understood or figured out. Like, what is the story behind lizard people? Can you guys help me figure it out? Like, what is the story behind that conspiracy that there are aliens among us that exist as lizards or amphibians or something like that? Like cold-blooded creatures that are humanoid and think and interact the same way as us.
No, I actually saw some of that, actually, now that you mention it. The thing about lizard people is that they say that they like shifters and they could change. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories of them, and like celebrities is mostly them. Yeah, like if you look through YouTube, you could find clips of like certain celebrities' eyes changing lizard-like. For a few people go crazy about that.
That's funny. That's funny because if like now that you mention that, because I used to live in California and that's when I met Annie. Now that you mentioned that, Coco, I did notice there are certain people. I always thought that maybe it's because because how it is with California. Like once you get into certain types of drugs, it sort of changes your physical format. You look a lot different. So I always assumed that the way their appearance changed had something to do with sort of their interaction with the drugs that they're taking on a regular basis. But I do remember seeing quite a few people in just like that off-putting physical form that in my head I always try to find logic deriving it from drugs and substances that could tweak you to the point where you would look like that, like your pupils would be super dilated and their necks sometimes felt like felt like there was like a frog living inside their neck, you know, and it looked like it would just sort of expand and then contract and expand and contract. I've seen some shady stuff when I was in California, so I know where you're coming from with that. But you know, I'm also assuming that it could have something to do with the substances that are being sold in California, because nowadays you get all sort of crazy shit. Like you know what I'm talking about, Annie. You could relate.
Definitely. This is kind of an interesting one because my brother's really into. He calls them reptilians.
Yeah, that's what I've heard them being called. Exactly. And like I said, I've seen people that look like that, but they were always super into drugs. Like, you know, and at some point, a lot of them were sort of like in my inner circle, right? Because I was living with a group of people, and during my time with them, I noticed that, you know, they act different as well. But again, I always related that to drugs. I never considered that, you know, it's something that's a lot more diabolical than that, which is interesting. Like, now that I look at it from that perspective, I always felt like they were odd as compared to anybody else that I met, really. And so, you know, there are many different ways that you could view this, though, right? Because the millennials would perhaps consider that conspiracy theory to be the truth about, you know, those type of people. But if you were to discuss this with religious people, you know, people that read scripture, whether, you know, biblical scripture or the Quran or the Torah for the Jews, what's commonly mentioned in those scriptures are, you know, the other life form aside from humans, you know, the demons or the devils, right? And so, like, when you see people like that, you assume that they're possessed. If you're coming from a religious background, you would assume that, you know, they're possessed by Satan or like a demonic force. While others who are not quite as familiar with the scripture would assume that they're aliens. So there are plenty of different ways of looking at it, but it's like, regardless of the way you look at it, you have to admit, sometimes you feel like there's a lot more going on than just your own thoughts or your own domain. You know what I mean? Your own physical space. There's a lot more going on than your own physical space, right? Like, you would sometimes feel like you got cold all of a sudden, even though it's in the middle of summer. Or you feel like you heard scratches or whispers. There's some odd paranormal activity going on around you that you can't really explain. And so you would feel like the presence of something else going on around you. You could contribute that to the existence of extraterrestrials or the existence of something else, a form of energy that you cannot quite see. Have you guys ever experienced that? Have you guys ever seen or felt anything like that? And how far has it gone with you guys? I'm more interested in Annie's stories, because I know Annie has had, you know, quite the adventurous lifestyle since she's been in California a lot more than I have. And so I feel like she would understand, or she would have probably heard something by now. Is that the case, Annie?
I actually have family that have been stationed at Naval Air Force bases that have some crazy experiences and stories that they've told me.
Interesting. Anything you would like to share?
So they were, my uncle says that it was about midnight and alarms started to go off about something flying overhead. So they scrambled the jets. And apparently after the pilots came back, they were talking about how they were chasing a sphere-shaped object that was super fast. They couldn't keep up with it. Pilots were all freaking out. Hardly any of them could speak, and you could see video footage. I didn't get to see it personally, but my uncle did. And this thing was pulling maneuvers that they had never seen before, jamming their instruments, and just had them all shooken. It got to the point where they all had to be relocated.
That is so strange. You're saying it was a flying saucer that was caught on camera?
A sphere-shaped object. They didn't say flying saucer. They said it was just round, just an orb.
Huh. Interesting. And it didn't it just like jammed their signals. It didn't approach them. It didn't try to harm anyone or hurt anyone. It was just messing with them.
Yeah, it just triggered the alarms. 15 minutes later, after chasing it around, the pilots came back, and like I said, they're all freaked out.
That is, wow. That is quite odd. And so, did anyone manage to get the footage? Like, is it somewhere out there? What happened to the footage?
I think that's all Navy property now.
It'd be impossible to get your hands on that, huh? I would have loved to see.
Yeah, that's... Me too. He said that on the last few seconds of the video, the sphere just shoots up straight into the sky, and that's why they stopped chasing it.
Wow.
It just goes completely vertical.
But see, like, okay, so how long ago is that, though, Annie?
That probably had to be about 20 years ago.
20 years ago. See, like, that goes back to what I was saying earlier in the episode, where, you know, there could be a lot more going on, right? Where, are we sure this is actually alien technology? Like, are we sure this isn't something that was sent from Russia or China, knowing as China to be, you know, the greatest boom of economy and industry in recent history? Like, is it really alien technology? Like, can you be sure that this wasn't sent from, you know, another country or anything like that? Like, even if it did exist and even if they saw what they saw, how can you be sure, right? Because honestly, if 20 years ago you would have seen a drone flying from anywhere else in the world, wouldn't you have assumed that that drone is actually alien technology? Because we don't have drones the way we have them now, right? And so, like, having a small aircraft, something, you know, 20 years ago, something that would seem like a small aircraft, that would freak people out, right? And you got to assume that too, because, you know, like with the military, they've always been ahead, at least 20 years ahead in technology, right? Like the sort of technology that they have right now, if you would see it, it would blow your mind. You know what I mean? And so, like, it would make sense that 20 years ago, something like that could have potentially existed, but was kept under wraps. It wasn't really given any civilian use during that time. I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical. It does seem a bit odd that it would just shoot up into the sky and then they would lose track of it, even with the primitive surveillance equipment back then. I would assume they would have at least been able to locate it after a shot in the sky, but then, you know, perhaps they just kept it under wraps, or they just, you know, decided not to talk about it for the sake of not disturbing the public. But,
nah,
you know, that's something to think of. Yeah.
You say all of that, but if you think about it, she said it was 20 years ago, right? But now there's still technology that's spear-based and can move like that. If it was like China, like you was talking about, why they don't have any commercial grade aircraft that's
I mean,
like spear.
It's not there for civilian use, but can you actually say with 100%, can you be sure that technology doesn't exist, but you just don't know about it? Can you be sure that they're not hiding in like some kind of developmental facility for that sort of stuff to just freak people out, or be able to use it to, like, you know, study certain things within the demographic and use that against you? Like, because you know how it is with China, right? It's pretty much conquered the economy, especially when it comes to how much debt the U.S. owes China. You feel like they're always ahead when it comes to building stuff these days, right? And so, and there are so many other ways that you notice they're spying on us, right? They're spying on the rest of the world, not just the U.S. And so, like, 20 years ago, it might not have been apparent. It's like now perhaps they have all this technology that would allow them to cloak all these, or they would use the satellites the way that they do, where they don't even need to send stuff like that anymore. But if at some point they created that sort of device, machine, peripheral, whatever you want to call it, just for the sake of that, because they didn't have any other, smarter form of technology to do it. I wouldn't put it beyond them. I haven't seen any spherical shaped devices or aircrafts or anomalies, but at the same time, I wouldn't put it past them. Technology has evolved in such a way that just freaks me out sometimes. Like, especially during the past couple of years as compared to the past centuries, right? Like, if you look at the Industrial Revolution and what had happened before, like between the 1800s and the 1900s, and even before that, when alchemy was still a big thing, technology has never evolved in the history of mankind the way that it has recently evolved. And you notice a lot of it happening in like these weird, strange places on Earth, right? Like, I don't know if you guys ever heard of like when Leonardo da Vinci came out with all of these designs, how he did it, like how he went into the woods one day and then came back 3 days later after they looked everywhere for him and they couldn't find him. And he came back, that he was still intact. There was nothing wrong with him, but he came back with all these designs for what we're now using as our automobile design. So he came back with the designs for how cars would work, for how automobiles would look and how they would work and the way they would run. And so like there are all these stories of like evolution when it comes to tech and sort of like the technological side of things. And it's a little freaky if you think about it. I think there's a lot more going on there than meets the eye. And I don't mean to be like one of those conspiracy theorists, because I've never actually delved that much. I think you, Coco, would know a lot more about it than I would, like all these conspiracy stories. But I always try to look at things logically and try to understand things from a mathematical perspective, per se. Try to put two and two together. I don't know, like what do you guys think? Like why is it that we have evolved so fast the way we did? And do you think that it has something to do with space? Because if you think about it, we got connected through space, right? And it's after we got connected that this boom in industry and technology happened, when we brought all the greatest minds together. But is there more to it than that?
It could be. I don't know. It's like the invention of like the satellites, and
Yeah.
what the GPS also was huge for us, connecting everything to everything, like using your phone to navigate, your car can navigate. All of that is all together, starting with the satellites.
It all started from there.
Yeah. Satellites too, and other companies.
Well, you could tell us more about it, Annie, because you recently had an interview with Tesla, right? So I think at some point you probably researched, SpaceX and the projects that are going on over there. Do you have any insight you could share with us?
SpaceX was not covered during my interview, but it does make me question, like you bring up China at the Pentagon. I mean, have you heard of like the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP? That's kind of like SpaceX.
So that's in China?
No, it's at the Pentagon, but it does make me realize like why they call it the Advanced Aerospace, why they call it that, rather than like interterrestrial. I guess it does kind of include just worldly stuff. It's not really extraterrestrial stuff, since it's aerospace. And they didn't really mention aliens. So, it could totally be something like us just messing with us, people messing with people.
So you think it could actually be a conspiracy, and there's nothing really going on out there that we've discovered yet, at least? And you think it's just like China pulling a prank?
I mean, yeah, it's not even like specifically China. It could be anyone. It could be Americans messing with Americans, Russians, or Afghanistan, Middle East. I mean, it doesn't matter who, but, I've considered, like I said, like both ends. I've looked at the facts, I've heard the rumors and looked at the conspiracies, and I honestly can't pick a side on where I stand with them. I mean, they both make perfect sense looking at both sides. They contradict each other, but they have such solid backgrounds and arguments. It's like, I don't know which side to pick.
I honestly wouldn't put it past Americans, the land of the biggest trolls on the planet. And so, yeah, that would make a lot more sense. America's just trolling the rest of the world. No matter which way you look at it, though, I don't know if you guys heard of this recent shuttle that was sent to Mars, and they were trying to figure out if Mars was going to be habitable. They were trying to set up certain experiments to see if they could cultivate the bacteria that they found there to sort of create different types of plants over there, utilizing certain type of bacteria. Obviously there are so many challenges when it comes to this, so it doesn't look like something that's even feasible because the atmosphere on Mars just does not support any sustainability of any form of life form over there. I think there was like a specific type of plant that the only thing that they had any luck with, but it didn't seem quite possible. Like I said, there are so many factors in this universe of ours. For example, the Big Bang Theory. Do you guys know what it is? Have you guys actually studied it?
I've heard multiple takes on it.
The Big Bang Theory is like, imagine an elastic pin and you put so much force in it and all of a sudden you just like let go. Now, that force, as soon as you let go, it just sort of explodes, right? And that's what's called a Big Bang. And everything came to be. The universe came to be just from that big explosion, just from that, centripetal force on that pin that just like exploded and the pin just sort of split apart and then everything, like the planets that we see came into existence. The stars, the planets, and all of it. And so like if you actually study the Big Bang Theory and you believe in it, you'll notice that there's so many factors and there's so many possibilities of anything happening in this universe. Because, who's to say that this universe that's always expanding is not also creating different types of life forms similar to us? It's because of the ego of man that, you assume that there's nobody quite like you out there. Like there's no race that's more superior. You don't even know the limits of your own world. Like people are still trying to discover what's happening under the sea, for example, right? Like there could be an Atlantis that we don't even know of, right? Like they could actually be sea aliens that we haven't heard of yet.
That's another conspiracy that they talk about, that the aliens is actually underground. There was one that it was about a dude, I forgot his name, but he was talking about that he used to work in an underground base with the aliens. It was pretty crazy. And he talked about his experience there and all that, and them building elevators and stuff that could move real fast and go miles deep. In the
was he the same guy that got an anal probe?
I don't know about that. I don't think I.
What is up with that story? Like, come on, guys, you got to help me out here because it's so common. This whole anal probe thing. It's like that's the only thing aliens care about, apparently. Probing you from the anal cavity. What is that? Like, what's good? Like, are aliens just seriously that funky? Like, are they? Are they just like perverted assholes? Is that like what we're going with? Is that the level we're going to stoop to? Just because we're humans and we're superior, we have to even make fun of aliens that we don't even know if they exist or not. And like, what is going on there? Like, what is the idea of this whole anal probe thing? What is that?
I don't know. It's ridiculous because they could just get your DNA through blood, through spit. I don't know about the probe, what they're gonna get out of that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to collect there.
That's what I was thinking too, but it's like it's such a common thing, right? Like I think it was on South Park, like they were making fun of it, and like there were a lot of accounts too. Like if you actually research this online, there are a lot of people that claim that they've been kidnapped by aliens and that those aliens sort of put something through their anal cavities or something like that. Like, to be honest with you guys, I just think that, most of these people are just like people who probably had a really bad rape story and they just wanted to, make themselves feel special. I don't, to be honest, I don't know. Like maybe the guys that kidnapped them and did that to them were wearing masks and looked like aliens. And so they just decided to go with that story, aside from saying that, they got kidnapped, and to be honest, I can't even like fathom it. I don't know like how this is a thing, but I know you guys. I'm not the only one who heard this story. Like I know it because it's a pretty common story with the anal probes.
I got two things about that. Number one is the story is so generic that it's true, and number two is so generic that because everybody just copies each other. Because that story, I wake up, I'm on a table, lights, aliens looking at me, big eyes. Like that's like super common alien abduction stories. You know what I mean?
So you think somebody just came up with that idea and then everybody just started copying it? Like it wasn't actually based on anything. There were no like real allegations of people getting something stuck up their anus, and then had to have it like surgically removed or anything like that.
I don't think so. Waking up on the table with the aliens looking at you and stuff.
Yeah, that
Wait,
is
wasn't there like an FBI story about this? About some Texas guy who like sexually assaulted like almost 100 people but dressed as an alien? Dude was from like Dallas or something.
Is that real? No.
It was like an FBI. Yeah, something about he was arrested by the FBI and that was like his court sentence. He like he anally probed people and like sexually assaulted them while dressed as an alien. There's like I think there's like videos or pictures of him, mugshots. He looks like Yoda or something.
Wow, now I feel bad actually joking about it. Oh my god. You are
and
right.
It's been like over a period of like 50 years that he was doing it. So I don't know if like he was the cause of all that, but he seems to be like the first marker.
Yo, that is true. I can't believe you actually knew about this story. Okay, so a Texas man,
my mom was big into that.
A Texas man confesses to kidnapping 79 people while disguised as an alien. Yeah, that would do it. And he definitely looks like a nasty Yoda. Like a white Yoda. Damn.
Wait, how old is he?
He looks super old in the mugshot. He looks like fucking, like at least over 100 years old. But he confesses...
Yeah, 40 years. He could do that.
He confesses to kidnapping 79 people while disguised as an alien. Like, he doesn't even need to wear a disguise, this guy. He pretty much does look like an alien.
I thought that was, like, his suit that he was wearing. Is that, like, his actual mugshot of what he looks like?
Yeah. It looks pretty bad. A man who was arrested by the FBI. So he wasn't an FBI agent. He was arrested by the FBI. He confessed to kidnapping and sexually assaulting several dozen people while using costumes, drugs, and special effects to have his victims believe they had been abducted by aliens. 73-year-old Arnold White was arrested after a joint investigation led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the El Paso Sheriff's Office, and El Paso Police Department. He was 73 years old and had that in him. Like, dude.
So the dude started when he was like 30.
But I mean,
what are you doing with your 30s?
Yeah, right. But it's not even that. I think he started I think he was still doing it at 73 years old. And that's when he got arrested. Like he was caught. I guess after he had done it or some shit like that, and this time they were able to actually find him. But like 70, like if I ever reach 70-year-old and I have that sort of energy, I never use it in that. Like I just try to keep fit or something. I'll try to use it on something useful. But like, what the hell is he like? Does anything even work down there anymore? Like how? Why? It doesn't even make sense.
I'm looking at the article.
Yeah.
Also,
are you seeing this madness?
It says that he used and objects in various body cavities.
Yeah, but it's like, what sort of sick satisfaction would he even get from something like that? Like nothing down there works anymore, guy. Like where are you getting that testosterone from? Holy shit!
Maybe he wasn't the only one administering drugs. He was taking them too.
Really? You think drugs could do that? Like adrenaline shots? Just a bunch of adrenaline shots? Like, how does his heart handle any of this? Like, it's just, wow, 73 years old. Damn. I gotta hand
it. Was gullible too, and that was found hanging around Area 51 in Roswell. So he was choosing the right people.
Wait, say that again. He was hanging around Area 51?
He chose victims who was gullible, and several of the victims were actually UFO investigators he found hanging out around Area 51 or Roswell. So he was choosing the right people. That's gonna be like, it was aliens.
Yeah, this guy gives like the expression crafty old man just like a whole new level. Holy crap.
He did it for 40 years, so...
Wow.
So did we solve the anal probe rumors?
I guess so. I mean, 79 accounts of it would definitely make sense. It would definitely make it a thing, I guess. Okay.
He could have other people that he told or whatever, and they could have been doing it in different states. That's a whole nother conspiracy. Maybe he's just one of a whole group of people that does this.
A cult?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. He was a trucker. He was a retired trucker. A retired 73-year-old trucker was going around dressed as an alien. Was going around dressed as an alien, kidnapping people and sticking probes up their anus. Man, only in America. Only in America, I tell you. Wow. All right, yeah, moving on from this. All right. So. Wow, I forgot. Like, where do you even go from this? Like, how do you even move on to anything from this? Okay, so yeah, that puts those rumors to rest, but it still doesn't quite explain, the whole thing going on with these weird voices. Like, have you guys ever experienced something like that where there's like no real logical explanation to whatever paranormal activity that's going on around you, right? Like whether it's hearing voices or like, sometimes it would be like scratches on the walls or sometimes it'd be even in your sleep where, you'd be having these weird waking nightmares where you feel like, you're awake, you can't move your body, but there's something moving around like in the background, almost feels like it's not human. Have you guys ever experienced something like that?
The sleep paralysis.
Yeah,
that's common with a lot of people.
But those creatures though, because like sometimes I would experience sleep paralysis and it would just be like, for example, I'd be late to work, but I'd be so tired, and so it's like I'm trying to get out of bed, but it feels like I'm awake, but I'm not really awake. And because of this concern that I have that I need to get up to go to work fast, that I get that feeling, but I don't really ever feel the existence of anything around me, right? But it's like when like at certain points of my life, depending on where I go, like depending on where I am during that period, sometimes I felt where I would experience this sleep paralysis, but there'd be something else going on there, something moving around or something trying to pull me in, something like that, like something just odd. And I was never really able to, I mean, I have theories and I have, a sort of explanation that I have just, from coming from like a religious background. But I'd always wondered, like, is there any talk of this as some sort of like extraterrestrial thing where certain, because it doesn't happen everywhere, it just happens in certain places that I go, right? Is it that perhaps these aliens or their UFOs or whatever, do they maybe target a different, like, are they a part of a different realm essentially? Because like when you sleep, and this has been scientifically proven, is that when you sleep you actually die. Like you die for a short period and then you come back to life whenever you wake up, right? And so when you're in that state of subconsciousness, are you really in a state of subconsciousness, or are you in sort of like a different state of consciousness where you're in a different realm, or you're sort of your mind's eye is seeing things from a different perspective. And I know you, like, if you feel comfortable, obviously, but you should know more of what I'm talking about, Annie, right? Because sometimes you can get there not just by sleeping, but by certain medications. And so, what do you think, Annie? Like, have you ever had these dreams where you feel like you're there, but you're not actually there? You feel like this is real, but it's happening on sort of a different side of the world.
Yeah, kind of like lucid dreaming. I do believe that it is kind of like caught between dimensions. Like we do kind of get some things do kind of penetrate into our dimension. It's just like realms that we can't see, kind of like Doctor Strange.
Yeah, kind of like that. And in those realms, you could then see different life forms that perhaps only exist in those realms. In fact, you could even sometimes communicate with them, or they could sometimes try to do something that affects you when you wake up too. Like you feel like something different happened, right? Because I remember, like, when I first moved to Burbank during that time, I felt something like that. Where it was my first night sleeping in my new spot, and it almost felt like, and it's funny that we're going to go back to the same thing that we just dropped, but it almost felt like something like moved really fast and wanted to like probe me from like the anal cavity. Like, I can't believe I'm saying this on a podcast, but it's true. My first night sleeping in that new spot in Burbank, it felt like something zoomed in on me and tried to put something up my anus. And I don't know if it was like the spirit of something that's just like, I don't know, and or an alien. I have no idea, but it felt so real to the point where as soon as he came close, I woke up and I was like, no, and I just sort of smashed the back of my bed, thinking that something was about to attack me or something. So when I woke up, I realized that this has definitely got to be real. Like, I didn't just dream this, or like, I know this happened. Something crept up behind me super fast. And so, like, have you experienced something like that? Like, do you have an explanation of what that was? Is it an alien that can fly and was able to fly and just like zoom in so fast on my location? Is that what had happened, or what do you guys think?
I would just chalk that up to a dream, but you saying?
But it felt so much more real than a dream, dude. Like, it felt like it felt like I could feel the wind hitting my face. I could taste stuff. I could smell stuff. And then when I woke up, I just, like, I knew that something was there. I knew that something was behind me. And so I woke up super fast and just smashed the back of my bed, right? Like I thought I was going to punch it. Like, I thought I was actually going to punch something behind me. But, that's all it was. Like, what?
You saw the figure?
I didn't see it. No. I did. That's why I told you I smashed the back of the bed. I didn't see anything. I just smashed thin air. But are you talking about when I was dreaming it? When I was dreaming it felt like I was sort of riding him. It's almost as if my soul was on top of him, and then by the time he zoomed in on me from outside, it's like he came from the air, and then he came through like the balcony to where I was sleeping, right? Because there's like a little balcony, and then in front of it was my bed. And so it seemed like I was riding on top of him, and then as soon as he approached, and like I could see the hands and everything, my soul just entered my body, and then I woke up and smashed the back of my bed. And so I didn't quite see the figure altogether, but I could see, like, I could hear him breathing, and it was like the rough kind of breathing, like it was a like that. It's almost as if he's breathing from a tube or something.
Yeah.
That's really trippy, dude.
Yeah, that was super trippy. And the funny thing is, I had just moved to California during that time. And so I wasn't even like, I had never really been familiar with drugs or anything like that before. So I was in a perfect, like, sober state of mind. It was my first time moving to that spot in Burbank, and it was my first night there that, that weird shit happened. But then after that, it didn't happen as common. It only sometimes happened, like, whenever I moved to a new place, right? And not all places. Like, I moved to a bunch of different places during that time, but certain places that sort of seem isolated than anywhere else. Places that are sort of not, where you don't have a lot of people, where it's not like usually older people live there, or not quite as inhabited.
Yeah, Ace is like another reason why all of this exists, like the conspiracy theories. Just you having that experience, it felt so real to you.
Yeah.
So people feel the same thing, like when they see a spacecraft, or they talk about alien abduction and all that. So it feels real to them too. When you think about it like that, that's like amazing. While a lot of people have those type of experience.
So you're saying there's like truth behind all these stories that we heard, and I think you have like something, like it's not just a story. You said that there was actual proof, and that it was on like a big show or a big podcast. I remember you mentioning something like that on the Joe Rogan show about Area 51, where there was actual proof of these things that people are claiming to be alien, like that involved aliens or something like that.
Yeah.
What was that? What were you talking about exactly?
I was talking about the Joe Rogan podcast. He had a guest that claimed he worked at Area 51.
He claimed that? Does he actually work there?
Well, it was later proven that it was a whole story. Like, they say he didn't work there, but then later it was proven that he worked there through the documents and all that. So he actually did work there.
Okay.
But they said he didn't.
And what's the story there?
Bob Lazar used to work in Area 51, and he got the job to try to backwards engineer the power source of the spacecrafts. And the reason he got the job was because one of his partner was called Gary, and Gary's partner died because of they tried to break one of them open, the engines, and something went wrong, and he died. So they brought him in to try to reverse engineer the spacecrafts, and he was talking about just what he had to do, what he was doing, and all that. It's pretty crazy.
So the internet seems to claim that Robert Scott Lazar is an American conspiracy theorist who claims to have been hired in the late 1980s to reverse engineer extraterrestrial technology. I mean, obviously the internet would claim that if people just didn't want information like that to sort of get out. So I don't quite trust the internet, or specifically Wikipedia, because it feels like most of the information on there could be biased sometimes.
Well, anybody in Wikipedia can edit, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, that proves what I'm saying, right? Where information could be biased on there. So, I wouldn't really trust it. But it seems that he has no evidence to support his core claim of alien technology. Are you saying there was proof, Coco? Like, are you saying there was actual proof of him working on this alien technology and him able to reverse engineer it? Like, is there actual footage?
Not of him working on it. No, there's no footage of that.
Okay, but what sort of proof is there of the claims that he's making?
The only proof was that he worked there. There is no proof actually of what he did, because all that is top secret. Of them actually showing recordings and stuff, that they're not going to show that. They're not even going to record themselves.
He was taken seriously at some point, though. So apparently he was interviewed by some reputable reporters. George Knapp on Las Vegas TV station KLAS, which is I think it's still pretty big nowadays. Like, cause this report was back in May 1989. He was talking under the pseudonym Dennis, and his face was hidden. So Bob Lazar, they brought him in as sort of a hidden figure to discuss his purported employment at S4, a subsidiary facility he claimed exists near the Nellis Air Force Base installation known as Area 51.
Yeah.
Apparently, his job was to help the reverse engineering of one of 9 flying saucers, which he alleged were extraterrestrial in origin. He claims one of the flying saucers, the one he coined the sport model, was manufactured out of a metallic substance similar in appearance and touched the stainless steel. In a subsequent interview that November, Lazar appeared unmasked and under his own name, where he claimed that his job interview for work at the facility was contractor EG&G, and his employer was the United States Navy. EG&G stated it had no records of him. Interesting. And you said, Annie, you said something about your family members that have had sightings of these UFOs. They also worked for, oh, what? No, you said they worked for the Air Force. And that's when they spotted this spherical shaped spaceship or whatever.
Yeah, he was a naval pilot out in San Diego.
Oh, so they were actually a part of the Navy, so they were also working for the Navy. And they spotted something like that, like a flying saucer. Like a spherical flying saucer, I guess.
Yeah, just a illuminated sphere just going through the air like an orb, pulling all sorts of maneuvers, and they couldn't keep up with it in their fighter jets. And it freaked out 6 pilots.
When you first said that, I thought maybe they were just playing so much Destiny and it just got to their head, because I didn't even realize you were a Destiny fan like that.
Yeah, these are old guys.
But now I'm starting to see truth in what they're saying.
Yeah, talking about that, he also claimed, Bob, that he
That he what? You said he, and then you got cut off.
Yeah, because you was gonna say something.
No, I didn't say anything. Shit, it's happening right now, dude. They're in our comms. They're in our comm channel. They don't want us to get to the... Yeah, they don't want us to get to the bottom of this. We're getting super close, guys.
Well, he also claimed that he got fired was because he used to bring his friends to the test flights that they used to have when they just used to fly the craft. And they used to do the maneuvers that Annie was talking about.
Test flights.
Yeah, except the shooting straight up, because it was like low.
So they've had test flights with the UFOs. Is that what you're saying?
No, with the spacecraft that he was working on, that they used to fly it and do test runs.
Yeah, the UFOs, right? The 9 saucers.
Yeah, but he only worked on one of them.
Oh, okay. And so they actually managed to get it to work, despite his partner that died.
No, it always worked. They wanted to figure out how it worked.
Okay. And it went wrong for his partner?
Yeah, but that was different. That was like a different thing that they try to do. They try to open it. Like, they try to open one of them. They have multiple of the...
Here it is. So Lazar has claimed that the propulsion of the studied vehicle ran on an antimatter reactor. And so they were dealing... Yeah. According to him, they were dealing with technology that they had never heard of before, and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, E115, which at the time was provisionally named unum pentium. I've never heard of an atomic number 115. Don't they end at around like 80 something? Damn, I should have been paying more attention in chemistry class, but I don't think it ever went. Like, do you guys remember the periodic table?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 115 elements. Okay, I guess I'm old. I'm super old. If the periodic table that I remember is 84 elements. Yeah, I'm getting fucking old. Okay, so Yeah, this is the element 115, which is during that time it had a different name, and it had not yet been artificially created. It was
Yeah,
first
that's what I'm saying.
synthesized in 2003 and later named Moscovium. He further said that the propulsion system relied on a stable isotope of E115, which allegedly
Exactly.
generates a gravity wave that allowed the vehicle to fly and to evade visual detection by bending light around it. That's insane.
Yeah.
Yo, this is real. That's crazy. That's like
And he talked.
so they could have created an entirely new energy resource from this technology, which
Exactly.
I wonder if they actually do have it. We just have never heard of it yet. I wonder if this is like like part of the military right now, because like if you guys notice, they cover a lot of distance a lot faster than they should, or at least it seems so. Like especially during the war with Syria, when Obama was moving the troops, like how fast he was able to move the troops there before they actually entered the mainland. It's just, it's a bit, like, I'm a bit skeptical of if this thing actually really did exist or not, because I feel like we would have already known about its existence. Like, if this technology does exist, someone would have surely spotted it, and it wouldn't just be like an article that's like 11 years old.
I'm saying Bob. He recorded the flights also.
Yeah. I wonder if there's actually, like, if we could find footage of this. Lazar also said the craft was dismantled, and the reactor he studied was stopped by a sphere or a semi-sphere which emitted a force field capable of repulsing human flesh. Dude, that is gnarly. Yo, I think, Annie, this is your first episode, and I think we're already freaking you out. I don't think you're going to be on here again, because if I were you, I'd be freaking out right now.
Yeah, just hearing some of your stories gave me chills.
Your family wasn't tripping, yo. What? Dude, did you hear that? So the antimatter reactor that he was studying was actually topped by a sphere or a semi-sphere. So what they were seeing actually existed, but it wasn't. I guess it was actually them who created it in a spherical form, and then were able to use that technology to propel it. If this account is true, at least.
Like he talked about that the actual the propulsion engine itself is like pressure based. So to turn it on was easy. You just had to put the thing on top of it, and it turned on. And when you turned it off, it turned off. It was pressure sensitive.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they're the ones that topped it off with the sphere, right? And so that's what Annie's family saw. It wasn't just the UFO. It was based off of alien technology, according to the article at least. But what her parents saw was actually a sphere that was built in by, whoever was using it to test it.
No,
The government or whatever. Say what?
The engine is spherical, but the ship could be spherical. It could be saucer. It could be
No. Okay. So the engine itself was a type of reactor. According to the article, the engine itself was a reactor. It wasn't spherical. It was. It doesn't. It could have been spherical because it doesn't actually say what type of engine like what type of shape it was. But so the reactor was topped by a sphere or semi-sphere, which emitted a force field capable of repulsing human flesh. Wow, dude! Thank God your parents were nowhere near this thing. Otherwise you wouldn't even exist, Annie, and I'd be a sad little boy.
That's intense.
That's crazy.
Bob talked about the repelling. It wasn't as strong as you think it is. Like
it said that it emitted. Well, he claimed apparently that it emitted a force field capable of repulsing human flesh. What do you mean? That sounds pretty awful. That sounds really strong. I guess if it depends on how close you would have to be to it. But it would make sense, like especially if it's a UFO that came from outer space, it would make sense that it would at least be this powerful because like you see how powerful the emission is from rockets, right? If you're anywhere near a rocket when it launches, your ashes within a millisecond. So something like that makes sense. Yeah.
That's at full blast, but I'm talking about when he was working on it. It still repelled, but it wasn't as strong. It was like magnet level.
Well, I guess they had to tweak it. I guess they had to tweak it to make it, where they could actually work on it and remain intact. Especially after what happened to his partner, it would make sense they would take the necessary precautions. He further said that the propulsion system relied on a stable isotope, which allegedly generates gravity waves that allow the vehicle to
that's the thing that they needed to make.
Oh shit!
The isotope. They couldn't recreate that. That's what they wanted to recreate mostly. Yeah. The stable isotope. They can't make that yet.
So, what's interesting?
They're working on it in intervals. Like they'll work on it. Like in the 70s, the technology wasn't good enough. They stopped. They started again. The 90s, he couldn't do anything, and they went through the 90s also, stuff like that. So they constantly working on it.
Guys, what's interesting? What's interesting is that they're invisible. Did you know that, Coco?
Yeah, the way it bends
light. The way it bends light around it evades visual detection. Huh. What is this? So you guys better be watching out for this. Anytime you guys go out now, you better be watching out for like an Avengers type shuttle.
Or like
the Quinjets.
The Quinjets. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
There's like so much detail in this. So.
It's also crazy. I'm about to blow your mind. You
Tell me. More than it's already been blown? Yeah, this is too much information for one night. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to sleep for a good couple of days now. This thing's going to keep me up all night thinking about this shit. What's up?
I'm about to hit you with the...
Tell me.
He claimed one of the spaceships was found in a dig, so it was ancient. Yeah.
Interesting.
What do you think?
I think that we're the source of it. My people are most likely the source of it. You guys know about all these conspiracy theories of ancient Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it probably happened during the time of the pyramids, right? Like I think it probably like that's where all these experiments took place, and it would make sense especially if it was spherical in shape, because we love our spheres out here. Like, all of our furniture is like that.
Say what? Saucer. I'm pretty sure the one that was dug up was a saucer, not a sphere.
Yeah. I don't know, man, but like it seems like if we go back in history, there are certain times, like especially in ancient Egypt, there are certain times where it almost seems as if we were so advanced when it came to technology and building structures and stuff like that, that we sort of had a level of technology that surpassed everywhere else, but then all of a sudden something happened. I'm not sure if it was a war or if it was maybe the flood. Something happened that sort of erased this technology, and the only things that stayed behind were these miracles, right? And if you actually look at the way the pyramids are designed, like the structural analysis of it is that it was made from something called red bricks, and those red bricks don't really exist anymore. So how were they able to create those? And if it was just a limited supply that was used for building the pyramids, where's the rest of it? Like, where did it actually come from? Where did they mine those bricks? And how are they able to actually get them out? It's almost as if maybe they had at some point created that form of brick. But there's no record in history of them being created. It's just, you know, it's telling us that it was like history is just telling us that it was a certain type of brick. There's no source of it. So it's interesting that you're saying that, because yeah, it could be that it's human based. It actually has nothing to do with aliens. It might not even be a UFO. It might have actually existed in the world at some point, but it's been buried along with ancestral technologies that we don't know of.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's crazy to think about that maybe aliens is more human than us. Maybe they've been here before us.
Maybe so. Maybe so. I feel like Annie knows a lot more, but she's just like not comfortable sharing it with everyone just yet. I feel like, you know, she might actually be an undercover alien where she's like, oh shit, they're getting close. They're getting close. And that's what happened earlier, remember? When you couldn't talk anymore? That's probably Annie. She's like
trying to diverge you guys.
She's texting the rest of her alien buddies. She's like, oh, they're on to us. We better screw with their satellites. Lazar's workplace was raided by the FBI and local police, which Lazar theorizes was to recover element 115, the substance he says he took from a government lab. Records obtained through a Freedom of Information request show the raid was part of a murder investigation. What the hell? It's odd that if there's any truth to what this guy is saying, it's odd that he was just like left to his own devices. That's what I find to be the most mysterious, right? Because he actually survived to tell all of this, to tell the tale, and you know, his workplace was raided, and you know, if they were worried about the type of information that he would be releasing to the press or anything like that, they could have, and they always did before, and so they could have made it look like an accident, right? And just got rid of him. So I wonder why they didn't do that, and why that's not the case. Because I've never really heard of anyone from Area 51 leaving Area 51, or actually surviving to tell the tale, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Element 115. So you guys think this is going to be like our new source of energy?
They can't make it yet. They can't make it stable.
Well, I mean, it's already been made stable for them, though. Which I think, again, I think if there's any truth to this, that they're already using it at this point. Because this has been, like, the technology has been there for quite some time. And so it wouldn't really make sense that, you know, they weren't able to sort of like harvest the energy or understand it and be able to utilize it. Because, you know, these tests that they're running, those tests were years ago. And the fact that, okay, so yeah, this is where you're wrong. The article does mention that it was synthesized, right? Because you're saying like they're not able to use it. No, they already said it was first synthesized in 2003 and later named Moscovium. So they actually gave it its own element on the periodic table, which means that they're now dealing with it. You know what I mean? So it could be out there. Like, it could actually be out there. We just have no idea. Also, guys, if you think about it, the way we're connected these days, and I know this is also going to open up the idea of, like, you know, us, this whole conspiracy theory and the story of us being spied on by the government and all that. But, I mean, stories like this sort of provide proof, or not proof, but at least they make sense of why we feel that way. You know, why we feel like, you know, technology has evolved so fast, and why we feel like, you know, something's watching us, or we're being spied on, like why we get that eerie feeling. And it's not just from the technology that we hold in our hands, it's from things that we might not even be seeing right now, right? Like, there was this theory that I'm trying to remember. I've heard it so many years ago, and it was actually it's not a theory. It's more of a philosophy, right? It was a great philosopher that said it, where reality, everything that we see, is simply a reflection of light. So without light, we'd be living in darkness. We can't see anything. We won't even know if something exists or not. And it's because of the fact that light, the light rays, the photons hit certain objects that we are able to see it. And light is what gives it existence in our world. So what anybody perceives is what's reflected by light towards that person, right? So that's why we're able to perceive it. That's why our eyes are able to see it. And so if this is true, if this form of technology does exist, and it found a way to sort of bend light to the point where it doesn't exist within our perception, then that would be the craziest form of technology ever. And that would also give credence to all of these conspiracy theories out there where it's never safe, like you're never alone, right?
Yeah. It's crazy to think about all that.
That's true. Annie, I've noticed you've been quiet this whole time. Is it that because you're truly freaked out, or?
Yeah, you guys are tripping me out. Last I heard, there were like 119 elements, and the 119th or 120th that they were developing couldn't be synthesized. So I think it's kind of like what he was getting at, that it has been made, but we can't synthesize it. About element 115.
So yeah, it's element 115. You're saying there's a 120th one that they've discovered but haven't been able to synthesize yet? Because that 115th one has already been synthesized into its own form of element.
It's 119 or 120.
What's
Yeah, it goes all the way to I don't know what 119 is specifically, but I just know that they can't put it on the table yet because they know what it is. They know all the chemical structure, whatever goes behind it, atoms and all that, but they can't synthesize it yet, so they haven't been able to actually see it, so it's not made its way onto the table. But they know everything about it.
Are you talking about the same element that I'm talking about? The one...
No, I'm a few ahead of you.
Oh, okay. So you're not talking about the one that Lazar was talking about. The one that, propels light and uses it to sort of conceal the ship and propels it through that same element, the antimatter element 115.
I'm still taking all that in.
So you're talking about a completely different, like, 1/19th element. And so that is also something that they discovered in Area 51, or is it, like, just completely unrelated to it?
Unrelated. I was just saying that maybe that's what he was getting at, that he said that it has been created and whatnot, but I was wondering, like, maybe it has been synthesized, and that's why it's kind of the last element, like, official.
No, it was the isotope that they didn't make yet. That he was
the isotope. Okay, well, I know mine hasn't been synthesized yet, but they have all the blueprints and everything to make it. They just can't.
Yeah.
Check the story out, guys. So, in A Mysterious Light, a segment of an ethnographic interview, Miller describes a strange light he saw once while hunting with his dogs in 1966. All at once, it was daylight, and I looked up to see what happened. There was a light about that big going up, drifting up the hill. When I looked and seen, it just faded out. I've been in the Marines and know what airplane lights look like, and it was too big for that. When asked if he knew what it was, he offered, "I don't know what it was," but went on to explain, "If there is any such thing as a UFO, that's what that was." The unexplained light on a walk in the woods is typical of many stories of these kinds of encounters. It's not only the media that tells stories and represents these kinds of ideas. Documentation of the experiences and stories Americans tell each other is similarly important for understanding and interpreting what UFOs meant to 20th century America. Guys, if you've noticed, a lot of these accounts always seem to date back quite a few years ago, right? Like even with Bob Lazar, this happened in like before the 1980s, right? And it was just like after the 1980s that he started revealing this information. When he got close to discovering that, you know, there's more going on in the world. It feels like all of these accounts were really old accounts, like before we were able to reach the level of technology that we have nowadays. And it almost seems like it was sort of a catalyst, a driving force for us to reach the level of technology that we've reached so far.
Real quick, Ace, I'm gonna send you a link real quick. You can look at it too, Annie. This one is actually, this is another one that I was looking at that was real interesting. It was about
Zimbabwe. So this is in Africa. Okay.
Yeah, this was a story about an alien landing in a school in Zimbabwe in 1994 and talking to 60 plus children.
Africa is not typically known by the mainstream for its UFO reports, but it is certainly ground zero for some of the strangest. It began as a calm, peaceful day at Ariel School in the small rural farming community of Rua, Zimbabwe, where on September 16, 1994, 62 of the school children ranging in age from 5 to 12 years old and of mixed ethnic heritage were out playing in the playground during their break time as their teachers had a school meeting indoors. The air was filled with laughter and merriment, but this was soon to change to gasps of alarm when something very strange materialized out of the unknown. What would transpire next has become one of the most interesting UFO encounters to come out of the continent of Africa, and which has never really been satisfactorily explained. There was allegedly a bright flash in the sky, and when the children looked up in bafflement, approaching the school were 3 or 4 silvery disc-like objects with what appeared to be lit portals around their edges. These mysterious objects reportedly would vanish and reappear some distance away several times, suggesting that they were either moving very fast or teleporting. Before one of the objects began to descend, following some electrical lines towards a brush-choked patch of overgrown feral land adjacent to the school grounds, where it eerily descended to disappear behind the gnarled trees and tangled underbrush. At this point, the kids were enthralled by what they were seeing, and one of the witnesses would later say of the object, the thing, whatever it was beautiful. It had a circular-shaped bright light as the leader, and behind it were tails of light in beautiful colors, green, orange, and yellow.
Some kind of crystal?
It moved slowly and looked as if it was just above the house. The amazing thing is that it moved absolutely silently. Wow.
Yeah, that goes with the Bob thing that is just bending light.
So yeah. It would be. And it's a completely different account too, the other side, like the complete other side of the world. The area into which the craft had come down in was off limits to the children, fenced off because it was deemed to be too dangerous. But they pressed as close as they could to this tangle of undergrowth and its barrier to peer within. And they saw only about 100 yards away from the mysterious object. It was described as either sitting upon the gnarled weeds or hovering slightly over them. And at this point, it still generated amazement in the gawking children. Yet this would change into alarm when the craft seemed to open to disgorge two strange beings, which were described as very thin, frail even, with slender neck and very large, outsized, almond-shaped, slanting black bug eyes, and dressed in tight-fitting, shiny black and silver one-piece suits of some sort. Some witnesses would later say that the entities also possessed long, straight black hair upon their heads. The enigmatic beings silently approached the children, although some of them would report having received telepathic contact during the encounter. One witness named Emily Trim would later explain of her version of events, saying, "All I can tell you is that the two beings were hopping along beside Lisa and I, and they were curious. They weren't touching the ground. They were almost like mimicking us. All of a sudden, they were in front of us. I described them as being about arm's reach, and we were frozen. Telepathic images started going across my face. Communication through the eyes. That's all I can really describe it as. It was just image after image after image. Those thoughts came from the man's eyes. One of the other girls standing beside me, she got more communication about the environment. And for me, mine was more technology uses and uses of technology. That's so strange."
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so there are two things here that I want to remark. First off, I'm not sure about the authenticity of this, because Lisa and Lauren or Emily Trim, those are not African names, right? And so, like, who are these people? And how is it that if this is what they actually said, unless it was translated? But, you know, because in the article it does say, you know, the parts where, like, it was inaudible. It almost seems as if this was a speech that they were giving, right? It feels like it just lacks authenticity. At the same time, it's like this. I don't know about you guys, but I personally have had the strangest experiences when I was younger. You know, when I was about 4 years old, 4 to 5 years old, and it felt like I was more in touch with the world, right? With certain things that I saw. Like, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I think I saw something that to me seemed like I'm not sure if it was an alien or if it was like a spirit or what it was, right? It like, the reason why I'm reminded of this experience that I had is because of this article, right? Where that creature, it seemed human. It wasn't actually like, you know, the way they're describing, but there was something going on with its eyes. And as kids, you know how kids are, like, we like to go up the slip and slide, and we like to you know, like slap each other and kick each other. And you know, that creature or whatever it was, it seemed more of like a bully. He was on top of the slip and slide, and he was older. He seemed older in age. And one of my friends, he was bullying one of my friends. He was bullying us as a group, but I managed to go down the slide and just, like, you know, got out. And I was calling out my friend to quickly go down the slide too, so he can get away from this bully. And you know, my friend, he was worried, he was scared, so he fell on his back. And as you know, the older bully was hovering over him, he kicked him in his eyes with both of his little legs, and then quickly went down the slide. And then that's when I noticed there was something up with his eyes. And I'll never forget it. Like, can you guys imagine? I'm 30 years old now. And yeah, this was something that happened when I was 3 or 4 years old. I can't even remember the exact age. But this was like one of my earliest memories ever. it was in play school. It was even before kindergarten, you know, where we just like went to a little play school and we were just like playing. This was 1994, 1993 or 1994. And so, you know, I see this odd figure, and I was never able to forget it. And so that's when I get really scared. So I grab my friend Mahmoud. His name is Mahmoud. I grab him from his hand, and we start running. And there were a couple other kids that, you know, it wasn't just my friend. They weren't as scared of him as we were because he wasn't bullying them. But it almost felt like they were all in sync, where like we've got to run now. Like they got so scared, and so they started even running ahead of us. So I grabbed Mahmoud, and we're running super fast. And you know, as we're running to the other end where the gate is, you know, there's like a gate, and then there's like a big hall, like an open hall, right? So it's like it's fenced, and there's like a building where we go and sit and make pictures and, you know, like drawings and like, you know, the macaroni figures or whatever. And so like we went past the building and we were trying to head to the gate. And so as we're heading to the gate, you know, everybody's just focused on running. But I look back just to see how close, you know, the bully was or whatever he was. I look back and I see this image, right? It wasn't it wasn't like it was almost as if it wasn't just an image. It was kind of like an apparition where he was carrying so much. It wasn't technology, but it was like advanced weaponry that I'll never forget. It looked like, you know, the strangest type of guns, explosives. It looked like he was carrying all of it on his back, and it was huge. He was carrying the biggest stash of it. And it was just the same small figure, but all of that was on his back, and he was running so fast towards us. And then when we finally got to the gate, I held on the security's pants, and I kept pulling him, and I pointed. I was like, look, he's going to catch us. And I'm looking, and there's nobody there. There's nothing there. The kid completely disappeared. We never saw him again. And it was only me and that kid, and the rest of the kids that were running with us were the only people that ever had a count of what the hell happened there. And nobody believed me. Nobody ever believed us. Now my own parents know. I kept telling that story over and over and over again up until I was like 10 years old, but nobody ever believed us. And so this actually reminded me of that story where, you know, there's some gnarly shit going on with the world. Oh, yeah, check this out. So for many of the children, especially the younger ones, so this is what I was talking about, right? Whereas like when you're young, when you're super young, you feel like you're more connected to the world, or you could see things that you can't see the more you grow up. It almost has, it's almost as if you have 20/20 vision, but only when, you know, you're still young, only when you're a baby. Then as you grow, you sort of become jaded. It's like you become narrow-minded. You become more and more narrow-minded. Except if you're Annie, of course. If you're Annie, anything can happen.
Always expanding like the universe.
What's that? Oh, right.
That article did sound a little bit too detailed to like come from kids, because didn't it say the aliens were there to visit the kids more?
I mean, it does, but, you know, at the same time, it's like, first off, again, with the names, it doesn't sound real, right? And secondly, they're saying before the kids actually, you know, met these aliens and saw that flying saucer up close, they said that they, you know, sort of sealed off the place where you couldn't get near it because it was dangerous. Yet somehow they were able to get close and approach them. And so, like, you know, which account is true? Like, did they actually seal off the place, or, you know, did the kids reach there before the place was sealed off? Also, what happened to these aliens? It's like none of that is actually
I think
mentioned
it was
here.
sealed before that, like even before that. Not for the aliens. I'm talking about just sealed off because it's dangerous. It
Yeah.
is Africa.
Yeah, but
You know what I
still,
mean?
if it was sealed off, then how were they able to get that close to it? How are they able to land the ship like that? So for the children, apparently their astonishment and awe was turning to outright fear, and some of them began crying and screaming as these otherworldly beings frolicked and cavorted about. The creatures then apparently just vanished into thin air. So that explains what happened. After which the craft rose above the trees and shot off into the distance to leave them awestruck. The children then ran back to the school in a panic and explained the bizarre series of events to the adults, who were at first apprehensive and not a little skeptical about it. The children were then asked to separately draw pictures of what they had seen, and spookily what was depicted on paper was eerily the same across the board. It was at this point that the adults began to believe that perhaps something really unexplainable had happened out on the rural schoolyard, and that it was not merely the imaginations of a bunch of scared kids. Do you guys see it? Do you guys see the sketch?
Yeah.
The incident
How many
began.
kid drew that?
Yeah. And so apparently they all had the same account of what they saw. So they all separately drew their own sketches, and all the sketches looked the same. The incident began making the rounds in the news, helped along by local African UFO researcher Cynthia Hind. And when word got out into the open, it attracted the attention of eminent American Harvard psychiatrist, Cambridge Hospital physician, and Pulitzer Prize winning author Dr. John E. Mack, who made his way all the way to Zimbabwe to do an investigation. Along with him, Mack would spend several days meticulously interviewing witnesses and perusing the sketches the children had made. They were both impressed with the calm sincerity with which these kids told their tales. They came to the distinct conclusion that the kids at least truly believed that this had all happened, and that these were reliable witnesses, made even more remarkable due to the fact that many of these rural children had never even heard of UFOs before. Mac would become convinced that they were telling the truth.
Yeah. So what I had was a question, and the people in the comments can answer too if they want. If you could, if like the aliens came to you and they said, "We will take you to our planet. It'll take a year, but like all that is fine. Like you eating and all that is not a concern. But when you come back, since it's so far away, 5 years pass in Earth, would you go and experience their alien planet for a year? If coming back will be 5 years later.
I think I could afford 5 years for the experience. I think it would definitely be worth it.
The world is not big enough for Annie.
Yeah, definitely not. I need to go places that aren't here.
How about you, Ace?
I mean, it depends. Are they going to pay me for it? Because I'm not cheap, My company isn't just like they gotta pay me. You gotta give me something good, like some good alien currency or some shit that I could use while I'm on there. I don't know, man. Like, to be honest with you, I would be curious, but at the same time, it's like I don't know. It's a matter of perspective and belief, right? And faith. It's like I believe that I'm gonna get there eventually, and it's not just there. It's beyond there. I believe that all of us are going to get there eventually, not just me. And some of us have already reached there. The people that have already passed from this plane into a completely different plane. I believe that the universe, like I said, is ever expanding and it's so huge. And this stage that we're in right now is just the first stage. There's a lot more to it, and it's like it doesn't matter how logical you want to be, or if you don't believe in God and in His angels and the messengers of God, Jesus. It doesn't matter if you don't believe in that or not. At some point, if you have traveled the world, if you have seen all this small world compared to the grand scale of things, if you had truly lived, you will notice that there's a lot of magical things going on in life. There are things that go beyond logic. There are things that are magical, that almost feel like miracles. You know what I mean? And so that essentially makes you believe that this can't just be the limit of it all. This can't be the limit of like, your mortality can't be the limit of it all. There's more to your soul than that. There's more to you, your existence, than that. And so I personally believe that eventually it's going to happen, but it's not going to be on the aliens' terms. It's just going to be the natural order of things.
Okay.
What about you, Coco?
I'll go.
That's simple. That's clean.
Quick with it.
You're already sick of this place, huh?
Nah, just to have the experience of seeing things that nobody ever seen, that interests me. Alien or not, just seeing things that's never been seen. You know what I mean?
What about you guys?
That's worth 5 years to you?
Absolutely.
Well, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, why is 5 years a big concern? Why would that be a big concern for him? Like, 5
You're
years,
getting
that's nothing.
infinite of experiences doing that. You know what I mean?
I mean, dude,
Like
if they look anything like that picture, I wouldn't really like 5 years around that. I don't know. I mean,
you get used to it.
I'd miss my girlfriend, dude. Like, I'd miss like a different form of interaction. Does that make sense? Oh, if I could bring her. Oh, well, wait. Is it gonna be the same girlfriend for 5 years? Though I don't know about that.
Okay.
That'll still be a problem.
When you break up, they just bring her back
and bring somebody else. So what, I'm gonna be like the sultan of like their planet. Like every couple of months, I'll just have them bring a new bride from Earth. Okay, I'm down with that. Yeah, I'm definitely down with that. That sounds a lot more cooler now. Now you've definitely incentivized this experience for me.
You just bring the sacrifices to them.
Sacrifice? Is that what you would consider to be? Like, if
you gotta say the
dude, come on. Like, if you're in a relationship with me, that would be considered as a sacrifice. Come on, Annie. You know me better than that. I'm not that bad. What the hell?
You meant the girlfriend's sacrifice.
Yeah, the girlfriend is the sacrifice. You leave her as payment.
What? No, so I'm supposed to give them the girlfriend as a sacrifice?
Well, you said 5 years. You don't want to be locked in, so there's your way out. Feel like you can keep her. I can go home now.
Interesting. I mean, it's a little bit evil, but something worth considering, maybe. Well, if that ever happens, then, I'm going to blame you guys for this idea. But anyway.
You're going to thank us.
It's just an interesting thing.
Anyway, so I would love it for our viewers to actually tell us what they think. Like, if they had been offered this, would they consider actually leaving this world and embarking on this fancy adventure?
Yeah, comments.
It would be interesting to see what people think about it, guys.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say earlier, like before I actually before you pointed out this awesome article, Coco, was that it seems almost as if it's like this. Sometimes you feel like in your life, in everyone's life, you know, it's not just special cases. You know, everyone's life always seems to be centered around certain things happening that lead you down a certain way. Is it plausible to generalize this? That we go through certain things in life that lead us down a certain road. And that if these things hadn't happened the way they did, we wouldn't be down the road that we're going through right now. Correct? With everything in life. With our families, with the jobs that we have, with the places that we live, with the trips that we go on. Like, all of that is because of certain factors that lead you to go down these roads and lead you to live your life the way you live it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're saying like our environment shapes our future or shapes our lifestyle?
I'm saying that, but I'm going even broader than that. So I'm going from an even broader perspective. That it's not just the environment, it's what shapes the environment as well. If these accounts are real and if these aliens exist, I feel like they existed for a reason. I feel like there was a reason why all of this happened the way it happened. And I feel like their involvement in our lives is to help shape life the way it is right now. It's essentially establishing a future for our race. Because no matter which way you think about it, it almost seems as if there's a balance to everything. And that's the reason why we exist the way we do, and that's why we're able to survive as a species, because of this balance. And you'll notice that the main source of life, other than water, like water is the source of life because, you know, our bodies consume it and it's 80% water. But if you look at its origin, if you look at the origin of life and the reason why we're illuminated, it's always light. Like, you always see that, you know, light is the reason why we're able to see, why we're able to breathe, right? Like, photosynthesis cannot be the way it is without the existence of light. And photons work in such a way where it's beautiful, you know, it's to teach you, like, what I mean about the balance of things, where photons, it's almost as if they're blind. They can't see. They are the light. They don't see the way we see. It's because of these photons that are constituted within light that we're able to see. But light itself does not see. It hits blindly. These photons, imagine like wearing a blindfold and being shot in a direction and knowing exactly where you're going to go. Knowing your target, reaching the core of these plants that allow them to sprout and survive, and allow them to go through the process of photosynthesis, where it gives us the air that we need and it takes the contaminated air that we release. So without this light, we wouldn't have life. And this is the point that I'm trying to make. If these aliens did exist, I do believe that it's not something to be feared. If they, the same as us, rely on the same source of life, then they needed to be there. They are part of life. Now, depending on what type of person you are, if you would consider these beings as aliens, then you might as well consider everyone else that you don't know an alien. Because at the end of the day, they all constitute what life is about. So if you're sort of an introverted person, then that would be your perspective of people and, you know, those who are strangers to you. But if you would look at it in a way where your perspective is of life in general, and the source of all life comes from the same essence, then you'll be able to understand that, you know, these aliens, regardless of whether they exist or not, are part of life, are part of the natural order of things that needed to happen the specific way that it happens in order for us to survive as a species. And so that's just food for thought for anyone who is ever concerned or had any form of anxiety whenever they listen to this sort of stuff is that don't really let it get to you. Try to think of the whole picture. Try to see the whole thing and see how beautiful it comes together in the end. All right, guys. And on that note, I'd like to end our episode. Thank you for joining me today. Anything else you want to add, Annie? Coco?
No, I'm good, man.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, guys. And with that, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and let us know in the comments which topics you would like to hear us talk about next, as well as which games you would like to see us play. Till next time.
Unbelievable. The aliens who haven't revealed themselves in hundreds of years were hiding underground?